Losing a loved one to abduction is its own special type of hell. However, not knowing the victim's fate and never seeing the person responsible brought to justice is a hell all of its own. This week we discuss 10 creepy unsolved kidnappings. Can you help solve any of the cases? Clark Handa was only 3 years old when he was abducted. In 1984 in Fairfield, California, Clark was one of 9 children in the Handa family. During one late August evening, while Clark slept in his bedroom, which he shared with 5 other siblings, an intruder managed to force open the bedroom window and sneak inside without detection from any of the sleeping family members. Out of all the children, Clark was the one who was abducted, and a ransom letter was left on his bed, discovered by his mother the following morning. The letter demanded money be left at a drop-off point if she ever wished to see her child again. The family complied and left money at the location designated in the letter. This case was odd, as usually a ransom letter is targeted at wealthy families, which the Handa family was not. No one ever showed up to take the money, and Clark, to this day, has never been seen again. June Robles was the daughter to one of the wealthiest families in Tucson, Arizona. So it made a bit more sense when in April of 1934, June was abducted while she was leaving her school, and a ransom letter was delivered to her father by a boy paid 25 cents to deliver it. The note demanded $15,000 for the return of his daughter and was signed simply as Z. Police were notified, and the kidnapper, for whatever reason, reduced the ransom to $10,000. When the father attempted to deliver the money, no one showed up for it. Weeks later, the governor of Arizona received a postcard that claimed to reveal June's location. Luckily, the kidnapper wasn't lying, and she was found, and found alive. She had spent nearly 3 weeks chained up in a buried metal box and had been given sufficient food and water while she remained there. No one was ever caught, but a federal grand jury believed the Robles family may have been responsible themselves and staged it as a hoax. Annie Hearin was far from a child at the age of 73. But that didn't mean she was safe from kidnappers. Annie's husband, Robert Hearin, was a very successful businessman with an estate worth $100 to $200 million. Late July of 1988, Robert returned home to find his wife had vanished, and a ransom letter had taken her place, along with blood smeared in the area. The ransom letter demanded Robert pay money to franchises owned by a company he had recently taken over. Robert received another letter shortly thereafter signed by Annie, which claimed that if he didn't pay, she would be sealed in a cellar. Robert sent the money. One recipient of the money happened to be an attorney named Newton Wynn, who Robert had had a legal dispute with in the past. In 1990, Wynn was arrested and sentenced to 19 years in prison for his assumed involvement in the kidnapping. He was released in 2006, maintaining his innocence. Annie has never been found, and her husband died shortly after her disappearance, never knowing his wife's fate. Divorces can get messy in the worst of ways. In Michigan, September of 2010, Tanya Skelton divorced her husband John after they had separated. The two had 3 boys together, 9-year-old Andrew, 7-year-old Alexander, and 5-year-old Tanner. Tanya had filed for divorce without John's knowledge, but he eventually found out and was enraged. He withdrew the 2 oldest boys from their school and attempted to head to Florida, but eventually had a change of heart. For this, Tanya was granted full custody of all 3 children, but John was eventually granted visitation for Thanksgiving and picked up the boys at their home. John took off with the boys, the last time their mother would see them. John was soon found in a hospital after having attempted to hang himself. When questioned about his children, he gave a number of stories which all made claim that he gave them away. He was eventually sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. He has refused to offer a credible story, and the children are assumed dead. Gabriel Johnson was only 7 months old when he vanished in 2009. Elizabeth Johnson, his mother, lived in Arizona with Gabriel and was involved in a custody battle with Gabriel's father, Logan. The two were awarded joint custody, and the following day, Elizabeth took Gabriel and went to San Antonio without informing the father. Gabriel was last seen at a motel 9 days later. Gabriel's father, Logan, began to receive disturbing text messages from Elizabeth in which she claimed to have murdered Gabriel and tossed his corpse into a dumpster. Eventually, Elizabeth was found and arrested and admitted that she had lied about killing Gabriel and had instead given Gabriel to a woman named Tammy Smith, who not only existed but had made unofficial arrangements with Elizabeth to adopt Gabriel. Forged paperwork and piled up lies between Elizabeth and Tammy attempted to tear Logan's parental rights from him. Tammy eventually served a 30-day jail sentence for forgery and conspiracy. Tammy has never admitted to knowing Gabriel's whereabouts, and Elizabeth spent 5 years in prison herself and has since been released and continues to maintain that she gave Gabriel away. He has not been seen since. Douglas Mueller was 19 with a promising future ahead of him when all of a sudden it came to an abrupt halt. It was March of 1977 in Scottsdale, Arizona. Douglas was leaving his job at a gas station at around 9:30 one night. Douglas never arrived home, and his family notified police with a growing concern. It wouldn't be until the next day when Douglas's parents were contacted by phone. They were told to meet at a specific payphone and follow directions. Douglas's father went to the payphone and found his son's driver's license and a ransom letter demanding $57,000 be placed at a drop-off point. Douglas's parents complied, but no one ever showed up. Over the course of the next 2 months, his parents were contacted 3 more times with more demands, and every time money was dropped, it was never retrieved. It wouldn't be until 2011 when Douglas's parents received any conclusive information. A femur bone had been found in a remote area. It was confirmed to have belonged to Douglas. No more information has become available, and Douglas's killer or killers are still at large. The first case of kidnapping for ransom in the United States. Charley Ross was the unfortunate 4-year-old boy to hold that title. In 1874, Charley had been playing outside with his older brother. 2 men who had visited and given out candy before approached in a horse-drawn carriage and promised candy and fireworks to Charley and his brother. The 2 children, seeing no reason to distrust the men, went willingly with them. Charley's older brother was eventually dropped off, and the 2 men left with Charley. A ransom note demanding $20,000 arrived for Charley's father, Christian, who wasn't as wealthy as the public thought he was. He went to authorities for help and eventually followed the instructions to drop off the money, but no one showed to collect. It was months later, when 2 men had been shot during an attempted burglary. Bill Mosher died outright, while Joe Douglas remained barely alive. In his last breaths, he admitted that he had taken Charley. Joe claimed that Bill was the only one who knew of his location, but Bill was dead beside him. Joe died after his confession, and Charley's older brother confirmed the 2 men were the ones who kidnapped Charley. Charley has never been found. The O'Brien boys' disappearance remains one of Newfoundland's greatest mysteries. Gary O'Brien had been separated from his wife and was stopping by to pick up his 3 sons, Adam, Trevor, and Mitchell, aged 14, 11, and 4, for a scheduled visit. Gary picked up his sons in his 1989 Ford Tempo and later called the boys' mother, claiming he was not going to return the boys, and that he rigged his home with a bomb if anyone tried to enter. Police were notified and examined Gary's house to find that he wasn't lying. He had rigged up a bomb that consisted of 2 400-pound propane tanks that could have easily leveled out part of his neighborhood had it gone off. Gary and his 3 sons were nowhere to be found, however. Nothing had been heard for a year until the engine of a 1989 Ford Tempo was retrieved from the ocean off the nearby Redhead Cliff. Some believed it may have belonged to Gary, who may have committed a murder-suicide, but there is no more evidence to indicate that the engine was even his at all. Gary and his 3 sons have not been seen since. Life seemed pretty normal for the Pitzen family for a while, until May of 2011, when mother Amy Pitzen decided to take their 6-year-old son Timothy out of school in Illinois, claiming that there was a family emergency, which was entirely untrue. Amy brought Timothy to a local zoo and then drove to 2 separate water park resorts that they stayed at. Amy, 2 days later, called her family to tell them everything was fine. Timothy's voice could be heard in the background. Little did his family know that'd be the last time they'd hear his voice. Amy drove to Rockford and checked into a motel. The next morning, she was found dead in her room from slashed wrists, self-inflicted by a box cutter. Amy left behind a note that said Timothy was given to someone who loved him and would never be able to be located. Amy's SUV was dirty, which led investigators to believe she had driven out to a very rural area. Amy was seen in surveillance footage with Timothy. In the footage, she can be seen wearing clothing that was never found. Like the clothes, Timothy also has never been found. His fate remains an absolute mystery. Dorothy Distelhurst was only 5 years old when she became one of the most gruesome unsolved kidnapping cases. It was September in 1934. Dorothy was leaving her school in Nashville, Tennessee, and vanished. Police were notified and began searching for her. The media eventually began to aim a spotlight on the story, and suddenly, Dorothy's family was inundated with ransom letters. But because of the attention, it wasn't known as to whether or not the letters came from the legitimate kidnapper. One note in particular shocked the family, though. The letter claimed that if the family did not pay $175,000, Dorothy's eyes would be burned out with acid. It was almost 2 months before 2 hospital employees were digging flower beds and came across Dorothy's body. Her skull had been crushed, some of her personal belongings were near her, but perhaps worst of all, her face had been clearly burned away with acid, just like the note promised. No murderer has been found, and it's feared the case will forever remain unsolved. If you have any information regarding any of the cases in this episode, please contact the appropriate law enforcement agency right away. That's all for now, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel by clicking on screen now or below this video so you won't miss the next episode of Seriously Strange.